All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. I'm TJ from Ready for Tuesday. I work really closely. I'm fortunate to work closely with the AI and Elections Clinic at Arizona State University's Mechanics of Democracy Laboratory. My day-to-day work focuses on helping election offices across the country with operations, resilience, and practical problem solving. Uh, this, I would say, in many ways, is kind of a passion project, not only of my own, but of other folks, Spencer being one of them, I think, here on the call today. Uh, Over the last year, we've had a conversation many times over with dozens of offices where they talk about how AI tools seem useful, but they don't have an idea of what's allowed, how to use them, where to start safely, importantly. So if you were with us the last time in February, we began to tackle part of that question using the NIST AI risk management framework. We focused that conversation on the govern function. That's about putting decision-making structures in place. Today, we're going to put some of that structure to work as we focus on the map function. So before you can navigate the AI world, we think the NIST AI risk management framework thinks that it is important to know the terrain under which you're operating. So that means understanding where AI is already showing up, what the risks are, and who gets affected when something goes wrong. This isn't meant to be an abstract conversation. Think about this in your own workflows, how it affects the people that you work with, the people that you serve, your voters, and the legal constraints under which you operate. Hopefully you leave today with some questions to ask and not just the framework to look at and study later. But before I risk droning too much further on, let's do some quick introductions, beginning with Scott. Scott?
Greetings, everyone. I am Scott Isles, the Deputy Director of Election Security for Charleston County, South Carolina. I'm a former U.S. Navy cryptology officer, designer of the Amtrak Railroad Safety System, and former Vice President of Cybersecurity Operations Threat Modeling for PNC Bank Worldwide. I now oversee the safety and security of our Charleston County election staff, poll workers, and voters. Happy Good Friday, and I'm honored to join you today. Thank you, TJ.
Thank you, Scott, our most overqualified, next to Spencer, webinar participant ever. Spencer, go ahead.
No, let's be clear. Scott is more qualified than the two of us put together. Let's be quite clear about that, TJ. So my name is Spencer Wood. I'm a consultant for the Election Security Exchange, where we're a nonpartisan group helping election officials with election security. And AI is actually some of the other work that I do as well. So thank you, TJ.
I love it. I love it. I will put it in the chat later. Spencer worked closely with the Ohio Secretary of State's office to develop a chat bot, which is really cool. We did some work chronicling that. I'll share it in the chat, but just want to share the fact that Spencer's really been involved in this space and is a leader in it as well. All right, well, let's jump into questions. This first one, either of you are happy to, I'm happy to have either of you go first. Just don't go at the same time. So when you first heard the phrase AI in election administration, what was your immediate reaction? And has it shifted at all since then?
I'll go ahead and say yikes. Uh, that was my first reaction. And TJ, as you know, it's not that I'm an AI naysayer, it's that I'm actually pro security and pro governance. And so for me, the issue is, and still is, I'm very much for AI. That's why I'm on this call, because I do use the map function, and I'm happy to talk about that. But there's a lot of components of AI in elections that make me nervous because we simply do not today have proper guardrails in place across lots of domains, and that's my big concern.
Excellent. Spencer?
So I know we talked in our little pre-show thing that I was supposed to be a little bit more pro AI, and Scott was going to be a little bit of a yikes, I think is how he phrased it. But I will say that I was with Scott when I first heard about not this webinar, but just AI and pulling AI into elections. It was, oh God. There were some other adjectives on there as well that were added that we're not going to do on the webinar. But it was some skepticism. Like, okay, we can't get things wrong in elections because it has consequences. Now, with that being said, I'm also a big believer in the technology with the right governance models, with the right things in place is incredibly important. And I think it's a tool that election administrators need to have in their toolkit, along with all the other tools.
All right, all right. Scott, I'm going to go to you before we kind of jump into the different categories within the map function. But just generally, you said you've used the map function, you've used NIST's AI risk management framework. What's your overall perspective of its utility and its application within the election setting?
I'm actually a big fan. I already recognize NIST as the gold standard in cybersecurity operations. There it is, and data protection broad spectrum. I'm fascinated with their protective and evolving approaches to AI data security. I will say that the AI RMF as a whole is designed to promote trustworthiness in which an outcome of effective governance. It does focus on outcomes, not controls, which is what a lot of us, initially thought, as a practical implementation tool across any size organization. That's what makes it so powerful. The map function specifically integrates AI risk across all existing governance structures and is the first disciplined process for understanding an AI system. So I know you've said you guys had gone through some of the govern function, but for me, I always use the map function first because to me, you can't really govern, manage, or measure what you haven't already mapped. So for me, I like it that they have designed it with the following AI axiom in place. AI is usually not developed in isolation, but it's also not designed to operate in a purely technical vacuum. And unlike a static program, AI is always evolving. So if it's generative, it is growing over time, which means you've got to make this whole process iterative anyway. So with it evolving, I like that the way they've done the map function in that they are also concerned with how the AI interacts and impacts society as a whole. That's part of the prescriptive process there. And so it focuses on how an AI really does function as opposed to how we wish it would or hope it would function. So it really is getting down to the brass tacks of the details in not the expectation, but how it is supposed to function for us. So I like that. I will say the one thing you have to remember when using the function is you have to provide it context. So a real super quick example, if let's say you're dealing with a problem of compensation for someone who is a third-party driver, all right, and you find out that the third-party driver is getting compensated, but they're getting paid in a straight line as the crow flies, not how they actually drove around the highways. Well, that's context. And that's context that you have to add into your AI model to say, no, you have to understand all of this component, not just the compensation. Here's the how of what they need to get paid, and here's the problem that we're facing. And once you provide that context, it's going to be a whole lot clearer. So I really love it. I think the map function's great, and that's really where I focus, and then the rest of our building deals with the other components. But I personally focus directly on map first. Thanks.
Absolutely. Spencer, anything to add there?
No, I think Scott did a fantastic job as always explaining it. I mean, he talked about all the appropriate guardrails and why it's really important.
All right, we're now going to jump into the 5 categories within the map function. I will say, printing this out, I had to go get new toner halfway through. Perhaps look at it on your computer. Don't print it as an artifact for the webinar that you're hosting, if you're hosting one. So let's talk about the first category of the map function, which is context is established and understood. So it asks, what is the AI system actually supposed to do, in what environment, and who is affected? For election offices, all of us have worked in election offices. The context of election administration is unlike almost any other government function. It's high stakes, time compressed, legally constrained, and very importantly, conducted in public and transparent view. So looking at you, Spencer, what's a concrete task in an office or in the field generally where you can clearly define what success looks like for an AI tool? What does the output need to be? Who needs to receive it? What's the margin of error within that?
Well, and I'm going to take one step back from that real quick, TJ, just to kind of set up the conversation. So I look at AI as no different than hiring a first-time employee or an intern who was a junior in college. Incredibly smart, brilliant, fast thinker, can research all kinds of information for you, but they don't understand context or they don't have the experience that you have. So that's kind of, for me, it's not how would you treat the context for a intern? Back to Scott's point, like, well, no, it isn't these two dots on a map where you're connecting dots. It's actually the route that they had to take to go around Atlanta, or, how you got from one place to another is, much longer. So I think for me, that's what it really looks like. And, also defining what success looks like. What is success when you are giving this task to the intern? So you're giving the intern some information. You're saying, okay, I want you to go do this, and here's how I would like this to come back to me as.
Yep.
Don't come back with handwritten post-it notes and scribbles and all this other stuff, and you're trying to figure out what that means. Okay, I would like to format it like this. I would like you to actually bring it back like this. And then, you know, also with that, and I know Scott's a big fan of this as well, you got to keep the human in the loop. Because at the end of the day, if you gave this to an intern and then you published it directly on your website and it was wrong, it's the chief election official who's going to get the criticism, even though it was the intern who generated it. So it's the same thing with an AI model. No matter what it is, you still have to have that human in the loop.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think about your work in Ohio, Spencer. I know that the election Eva, the assistant for election offices, is not publicly deployed. And I'm sure that there's a reason for that. You have an audience where you have a higher context understanding, perhaps, or hopefully, I guess. Can you speak to kind of some of those decisions as you're thinking about the map function, thinking about AI use more broadly within election offices?
Yeah, so again, I think, Scott kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier as well. There's a broad difference between having a chat bot that is serving other election officials versus a chat bot that is giving it, results and answers to the general public. So that was part of the decision process, was to say, like, it's fairly new technology, so we want to try to, we want to experiment, we want to do outstanding innovation. But at the same time, we want to make sure that this is for election officials because they understand some of the context behind it. And it is going through it. It was literally pulling up and providing answers from a 472-page document, which is the, election officials manual for Ohio. So the idea was, again, to kind of keep it internal. It's behind authentication, so you have to sign in, you have to know what you're doing with it, because that way you understand which questions to actually ask. And then sometimes, AI does sometimes get things wrong. And, that's okay,
Oh,
but I know never, never. But, again, that's why the election official could then take and go, that's not quite the case. Or, come to find out, AI is really bad at math, ironically. So the first Tuesday after, or the first Tuesday after the first Monday, those kind of things that are very typical in elections, it sometimes has, problems with that type of context.
oh yeah. Scott, I'm thinking about the fact that elections, we mentioned it, very public, very transparent, kind of a foundational piece to, I think, good conduct of elections is that transparency piece. When you think about AI systems, and to Spencer's point, their proclivity, propensity, whatever P word to be both the smartest and dumbest thing in the room, and understanding that it gets things wrong and does so quite often. How does adding AI systems to the election context affect the accountability pieces kind of within that transparent structure or that transparent environment? Does it give you more pause? What do you think?
Yeah, yes, it does. Actually, and it's because first of all, the accountability for the elections, as Spencer was saying, you have to keep the humans in the loop. We're completely in the loop as far as the election process is concerned. And the AI, anything we use like that is just like any other tool. Essentially, it doesn't have accountability. We do. So we are accountable to whatever it is we bring into the process, and that is the concern as far as what we're doing with AI. So, in fact, I'm going to give you a really quick example. I had a situation last week. Now understand, I come from a little different perspective here. I'm not necessarily in voting operations, but what I do here is I am an election security officer. So that's what I do. I do safety and security of all these folks and our processes and the vote and the whole thing. So I make sure that's all safe and secure. But I had a situation last week in which a vendor wanted me to transmit our EP, RP, IRP, and COOP plans for their analysis. Those are all our 3 emergency response plans, okay? And we have those formalized in how we secure ourselves internally. And that's in the entire voting process, our recording, the data, physical security, all of that good stuff, emergency security. Um, so they asked to see those plans and for me to ship them to them. So I asked if the documents would be going into an AI. Um, they replied, well, for faster analysis, of course. And I said, well, where is this AI? Where will it be processing our data? And what happens to that data after the analysis? Then they could not exactly answer those questions to my security satisfaction. So my recommendation here is be wary of where and to whom you submit your secure data. And I'm not even talking voting data. I'm talking how we do what we do. Because once it has left your domain, even copyrighted data is then out of your control with no legal protection guarantees. Note that I did not send our internal information to those vendors. So it requires, we're back to the human part of it again. We have to be very thoughtful about how we integrate AI, and we have to be very knowledgeable about what is going to happen to any data that we send to it. It's one thing to send it to even one of our protected vendors, that we have a contract with, right? Send it to them, but ask the questions, what is happening to that data? Where is the AI physically? And you might not be happy with the answers. They need to give you the comfort level that what you're sending them is protected. Okay, so just my thoughts on that.
Absolutely. Anything to add there, Spencer?
So, I mean, this is actually something that, I think we're going to touch on it later too, but like, what's one thing that you should have in all your contracts, is that the vendors disclose how they are using AI. Was AI used to produce your outputs? Yes is an okay answer, or maybe it isn't. I mean, it depends on your risk calculation, but it is okay to say yes, or it's okay to say no, but just having acknowledgement and understanding that the vendor is going to use it for these type of outputs. Are they using AI to do source code review for vulnerabilities, or are they just vibe coding your voter registration system? I mean, let's hope that's not the case. But I'm just using it as an example. What does that look like? Are they using it for quality control, but then they also still have a human in the loop? So those are all things that just have the understanding from the person, the election official, when that goes bad, even though it was a vendor who messed up, you're still the one taking all the heat. So at least you understand from a risk perspective, hey, here's how much risk I'm taking on with this particular vendor.
Yeah, I think there one of the things we like to highlight for folks, or at least underscore for folks, is a lot of the concerns surrounding AI can fit into existing data privacy or computer use policies. This is a new shiny thing. That new shiny thing does not mean that your vendors, your employees, whomever, across kind of the mapping spectrum of this process, that doesn't mean that just because it's new, they get to break the rules of the past under the new context. So that's an excellent point. All right, let's move on to the second category. This is the one that I am least qualified to speak about, which is scientific understanding and risk tolerance. This is the second function or second category within the MAP function. This asks organizations to honestly assess what AI can do and what AI can't do. I think we're at this brave new world where if it can be done, AI can do it. Or if it can't be done, well, maybe AI can do it. And then you match that against your own or your organizational risk tolerance. For election officials, this is especially pointed. What does your office actually know about the AI tools being marketed to you? I would say Charleston County is in a really advantageous position with Scott, where Scott knew to ask those questions, knew to follow that path. And what are the consequences of not asking those questions, or worse, of being wrong? So I'm gonna go to Scott first. I know that every vendor, every technology provider, whether it be in elections or veterinary medicine, is now offering some type of AI integration within their systems. So when a vendor comes to you and says their AI is 99% accurate, what questions would you as an election official be asking before taking that number seriously or having any further conversations with them? What does a 1% error mean in this specific context?
Well, exactly. If they come to me and say their AI is 99% accurate, I'm going to say, what does that mean? Very simply, put it back to them. You explain to me what you're talking about. Um, because that's, believe it or not, even with that figure, that's an incredibly vague statement to make to me. I know, I told you I worked for PNC Bank some years back as their vice president of threat modeling. One of the things we had to do, and because we need to do it in elections too. When you're dealing in the financial sector, you have to deal with the FCC, the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. They all govern the banking system. So let's say we were bringing in a new cyber vendor, right? They had to go through, it was approximately a 148 page document of like 20 questions per page that they had to answer to our satisfaction. Now, don't get me wrong, you think that's overkill, but you're protecting the finances of the United States and the world and the whole deal. But they had to answer those to our satisfaction, or they were not going to be a vendor on the approved list. So I'm not trying to say that's what you need to do here from an elections perspective, but I do say that we need to make certain that we do ask those questions. If they throw anything to you that sounds like it's too good to be true, or you feel like you're getting, a sale, right? A sale from, we're going to sell you our AI. We're going to sell you this product and sell you what we're doing. Yay, great. Don't quite fall for it yet. In other words, make them prove whatever it is they're saying to you. Um, and I know, and I'm now going to circle back to the scientific understanding and the risk tolerance part of this that you had initially initiated, TJ. Don't let your use of the mass map function throw you, as in don't get overwhelmed by, oh gosh, I have to have this huge scientific understanding of the AI. No, you need to understand what it is that you're looking for it to do. That's really what the tool is. The tool isn't saying you produce all this stuff and throw it in there, because the tool's not going to give you anything back. What this tool does is it makes you think about how to look at these things, and then you're going to make it do what you want it to do as far as the output. So from a scientific understanding, like in elections, for me, again, I'm safety and security. So I look at, like, one of our use cases was AI assisted threat detection and incident awareness on election day. I won't get into those details unless we need it somewhat later, but the whole point was, what would the AI need in order to do that? So in our case, an AI would need, for example, video analytics, audio detection, social media monitoring, and alert data aggregation from law enforcement. So that was as far as technical as we got. As long as we give it those four components, it then should be able to do early threat detection for us. So you see, I didn't get into the science of it. I said, here's what I want the AI to do. And then we also say, and here's the limitations of it. The limitations are the AI will make no decisions without contacting us, period. In other words, it accelerates our awareness, but we, the humans, control the response. Okay, so you actually are taking control of this process. And that's how this is gonna, that's how you can easily get into this map function. And I hope I answered your question. Sometimes I feel
No,
like I go around, I needed to land the plane, so.
you landed it. You landed it. Spencer, I want you to touch on the same question, but I also want to add somewhat of a wrinkle to it, which is I don't personally know anybody who is 99% accurate all the time. Talking about the human in the loop. So how do you grapple with that, right? If a well-implemented AI system can promise you 99% accuracy, I wouldn't accept a promise from any individual for 99% accuracy. What does that look like as it relates to kind of the risk context and what we're talking about?
Well, and I'm going to go back to my intern example because I think it's unfortunately probably the best, most perfect example. An intern's not going to get everything right. But, that's why you always need that human in the loop. You need the adult in the room, again, no pun intended, to be there to quality control and quality check what the AI is actually coming back with. I know Scott mentioned that you're not going to make any decision. The AI is not making any decisions. It's just going to flag, in his example, we might have something here that you want to take a look at. And then Scott will be looking at it with his intelligence and his context of his brain going, oh, that's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. Or, wow, okay, yeah, we need to look at that right now. So he's going to understand that context. So because the AI is amazing at what it can do. It can find those little needles in the haystack of little data points that if one of Scott's analysts was trying to piece A, B, and C together, they probably would have missed. The classic example I know we've always given is like ballot proofing, proofing of ballot images. I'm not going to let AI just proof all the ballot images and not ever go back and look at it as a human. But would be really good at seeing that you've left off a apostrophe in a candidate's name, or you misspelled one of the party's names accidentally because, I don't know, a single election official was tired at the end of the day or has more than enough staff to do that. So having those AI tools do some of that preliminary work where it's really good at you feed it lots of images, you say, here's your candidate list, boom, go through, look at it. But then you still, as a human, having that human in the loop, go back through and do it again and do it again. Because again, understanding that context is if you also have the error on your spreadsheet, you fed it, it's not going to like, wait a minute, I spelled this party wrong. I spelled it everywhere wrong. That's a problem.
Anything there, Scott, before we move on to category three?
No, sir. I think Spencer
Okay.
filled all the holes in the Swiss cheese. He's
I love it. I love it.
98.5. Hey, woo.
99% accurate. Let's move on to the third category, which is AI risks and benefits are mapped and categorized. So it asks for a structured look at what could go wrong, how likely it is, and who bears the harm. So having an honest accounting of those benefits. I think, again, we talk about the election administration context where reputational harm, mistakes can outlast any technical fix. Just because you made it better doesn't mean that folks are going to trust you again right away. And then importantly, election officials are serving populations, and those populations don't really have a voice in whether or how the tool is used, kind of at that operational level. So I'm looking at you, Scott. I know you touched on this, and you touched on the fact that you're not specifically tasked with voter operations, but just thinking about some of those items, whether from the benefit or the risk kind of side of the room, what are some benefits or risks in promoting security and safety kind of throughout the AI life cycle, the election security and safety?
Well, that's a broad question and it would have a very long answer. So I'm going to shorten it up. Let me go back to the use case I just gave you, where we're looking at uh, dealing with AI giving us some advance notice on election day threats. As far as like potential risks from that, and that's really why I'm saying that, come up with what it is that you're trying to solve. So in our case, the solution was we're trying to figure out a way to improve our response time. So the potential risks we would have of that, so you start thinking about, well, where could this be wrong, would be like false alarms or missed threats or panic, that sort of thing. So those to us would be the risks. Now, all the benefits of this is our faster response time. Now, when we're talking risk, there's all kinds of formulas and ways that you can compute risk and all of this. It is very simple. And I believe that the RMF covers that in that they really just say you should categorize it by low, medium, and high. And I'll go back to my cyber days for threat modeling. This should be helpful for you. What you can do is you can do like use a numeric system. You might look at with the risks that I just told you, the false alarms, missed threats, and panic. What is the likelihood? Okay, so look at likelihood and rank those low to high, 1 to 3. And keep it that simple and give those a point. Is it low, medium, or high for each one of those individually? And do one is low, 3 is high. And then what you'll do is then we say, all right, now what would be the impact if they do happen? Because you could have something that's very high, a high potential risk. This really could happen. But if it does, its impact is like very low. You know what I mean? It's going to be minimal. As opposed to you can also have something that's very high risk that its impact would be huge if it hit. So you do the same thing. So 1, 2, 3, low, medium, high likelihood, and then you do 1, 2, 3, low, medium, high impact, and then you just multiply the two. And that's going to give you a risk score. So something that is high likelihood, high impact would be a 9, 3 times 3. Something that's low impact, low likelihood would be a 1 times 1. And that's going to help you sort of, quantify your risk. But I wouldn't get too much deeper into that. You can get really into the woods. Really, it's more about, and that's going to help you decide what's important to you and what you tell the AI limits you want or what you want the AI to do. But really, the RMF is going to make you be pulling out that thinking process of what are my risks? So you think about those again, the false alarm, missed threats, and the panic. And then you think about also now who is going to get impacted by this? For example, is it the voters? Is it us in our building because we could have a polling place close earlier, or we have to relocate, that sort of thing. So just follow those little steps. Don't get overwhelmed by it. But once you start doing that process, you're going to see how much easier it becomes for you.
Excellent, excellent. Spencer, I'm turning to your incorrectly perhaps assigned role of being the AI evangelist here. So I'm thinking about the fact that we now live in a world where AI systems are omnipresent, doing things that most folks even 5 years ago would have said that can't be possible. And of course, they make mistakes. Uh, they make mistakes that are embarrassing to the extent that an AI system is sentient, embarrassing to the system, embarrassing to the folks who are supposed to be having some type of governance over it, et cetera, et cetera. But when we think about the benefits and all of the amazing things that are happening, are those getting a fair shake alongside the risk? So going back to the ratio of risk to benefits, where are we falling? Sorry if this is a somewhat philosophical question.
No, I mean, I think it's not. It's actually a pretty important one. Because at the end of the day, I think everything is about risk management. What are you as an election official? What are you willing to risk? What is the downsides of not risking, using AI. So for example, again, I don't know a single election official that says I have more than enough people to do election work. I don't I actually have extra people. I don't know what to do. And no one says that. But they're usually heavily understaffed. So the risk of using AI is, okay, well, if the information, I don't check the information, it gets something wrong, that's bad. But the other risk is, what if that job doesn't get done? Is that the greater risk to the organization? Or what if I'm rushed and I go through the ballot proofing really quickly because I'm rushed? I have to get out the door because I'm already understaffed. It's too late. Candidate filings were late because of a court decision and all the other parade of horribles that happen with election officials, circumstances they have to deal with. Well, it's probably a greater risk to not get the ballots out in time and things like that versus letting AI do that first scrub with you because it's going to catch all those errors that you missed because you're tired, you're exhausted, you've been working 18-hour days trying to get these ballots proofed. Then you still do your work just to make sure it's okay. I mean, so it's a risk versus reward because sometimes the risk of not doing something is actually the greater risk.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, I'm gonna move us on to, we're gonna combine 4 and 5. The fourth and fifth category, we're gonna talk about vendors' readiness and ongoing oversight. I recognize that we're on a holiday afternoon, so we're gonna try to get folks out of here a little bit early. So the fourth category extends the risk map to vendors, training data, and third-party infrastructure. I think we've covered a significant portion of that through some of our other answers. So I really want to focus on the fifth category, which is that ongoing oversight piece. Spencer, I know the Election Security Exchange has a resource on standing up an election security working group. Scott, I know that Charleston County, when you look across the country, is probably one of the most security forward jurisdictions in the country. I think that's a testament to you, a testament to Isaac, a testament to your whole team, and a testament to your county. How do you continue the conversations about AI? How do you make it so that this mapping function is not just a single conversation in time, but something that continues, something that recognizes, to your point, Scott, the AI world is quite dynamic, evolving constantly. What do those conversations look like? How do you set them up? Spencer or Scott, happy to have either of you jump in. But before you do, if folks have any questions, please put them in the chat. Happy to answer them and happy to get to them.
Spencer, you go first this time, sir.
Okay. So I look at this again as no different than a lot of the other stuff that we do. It goes back to actually Scott's earlier statement when I think we started and we kicked this off, where it's really about asking your partners, what are you going to do with my stuff? What are you doing with my stuff? How are you treating it? How are you protecting it? How are you keeping it secure? And then having transparency with your vendors, with your suppliers, with your partners, so that they're all understanding it. Like, Scott mentioned, I mean, yeah, he'd probably be okay with providing a written copy of his incident response plan with his election security working group, because he also probably has an understanding that that information is going to be safeguarded. That's a completely different conversation if he's just like, hey, can you email this out? And now it's going to be enabled with whatever AI tool that their Microsoft provider or Gemini or whatever is using, and how that data is being surfaced with everyone in that organization, or heaven forbid, someone else. So I think it's just having that expectation up front and that privacy, understanding what the privacy looks like up front is, for me, that's the biggest thing. Over to you, Scott.
I'm going to piggyback off something that Spencer had said in his previous response, and that is we use the evolving ER domain to our benefit. And the reason I say that, especially, there's a old phrase I used to use when I was in the Navy years ago, and it's called managing the manager. Sometimes when the person who's up here isn't doing what they need to do and they're not listening to you, and you're like, how do I phrase this so that they're going to be paying attention to what I'm saying to them? Um, we have to remind them first, two things. First, we have to ensure we've got buy-in from the top down. If the person up here doesn't care about AI or doesn't care what you're saying or any of this, in regards to what we're doing here, you're already in trouble. If you don't have that level of support, that at least you've got support coming from the top down, that's going to be a problem. So one, make certain you do, and two, part of the way that you continue to do that is explain what the risk is. Here we go, risk again. That doing nothing, if you do nothing and ignore the continuous changes that are going through AI in the world today, that's going to become problematic for us. As much as some people, and like I said, I had yikes at the beginning, right? But I've come around to where it's useful. And I understand that as long as since there are no official technical guardrails right now, we have to be the guardrails. So as long as we're the guardrails, I'm okay with that. So, but remind your leadership, if they're going to put their head in the sand, that's not going to work because everybody who is external to us, and elections, it has lawmakers and government and the public and vendors. We've got all this other stuff out there that's impacting us. Well, guess what? They're all changing with AI. We have to too. So let your leadership know we have to be on board. We have to be in the conversation. We have to have full understanding of what's going on so that we can, in fact, have a voice in the risk. So at least we can quantify, let me tell you, here's the likelihood, here's the impact, and here's low, medium, high. And we're part of the conversation because we absolutely have to be. Burying our heads in the sand will not work with AI. We're going to see so many more changes to elections coming up. We need to be part of the conversation now.
Well, and I think the flip side, just to kind of tag on to that, is the opposite of that. When you have the commissioner or the political leadership saying, "Oh my goodness, this AI thing is the best thing ever. We're going to do everything with AI." You almost also need, again, that same risk principle. Like, let's hold on a second. I'm not saying we shouldn't use AI, but let's spend a hot minute thinking through the risk. Would you want to put this data on Google and make it available for everyone, or those type of things? So I think it's both sides of that equation. I know
Exactly.
Scott has been doing a very good job articulating.
Exactly. We're all part of the guardrail system. Yep.
Excellent, excellent. I had a question written down, but the question here in the Q&A actually touches on it. So I'm going to ask my last question first, and then we will go to this question, and then we'll close it up. Scott and Spencer, if I'm an election official in the audience, and well, I wrote down tomorrow, but hopefully nobody's reaching out to you tomorrow. But if an employee reaches out to you and says, "Hey, I want to use X AI tool," what's the one question that you would tell them to ask first?
Is it paid or is it free? Because if it's free, the data is the price of offering it for free. Because that usually gets to the root of the issue almost straight away.
Scott?
I'm going to say the question we should always ask with any interaction that we have with AI, like, the Chat GPT or the Grok or whatever, it should be the question we ask of ourselves. What data am I sending, and am I allowed to do that? Because we have to be certain we're not sending the wrong thing. We have to ask that before we ever even consider sending it.
Excellent, excellent. And then here's the question from the person in the audience. They heard you, Scott, speak to those questions you asked a vendor before you sent the data. I think you just reiterated part of them. Can you write down a list? Maybe we can send it afterward of what those questions were for the vendor.
Sure. They were off the cuff, but I'll be happy to document those and I'll get them to you, TJ. So
we will get it from the recording. We're going to close out today a little bit early because of the holiday. So I do want to thank everybody for joining. I want to especially thank Spencer and Scott for spending part of their Friday with us. As we mentioned, or as I mentioned, this is just the second session in a 4-part series. Next up, we're going to talk about measure, the measure function of the AI, the NIST AI RMF. So that goes into analyzing, assessing, benchmarking, and monitoring AI risk and related impact. If anybody has questions later, feel free to reach out to support@readyfortuesday.com. We're always happy to talk through real world scenarios. And then whether you're celebrating Sunday or not, I hope you have a good, little G, a good Friday. Thanks for the work you do, and we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.